My name is Adel. I work at Ferocia. This is the start of my 4th week, so I only just got here after 9 months sabbatical. Can recommend if your life can support it. Definitely needed it after the last couple of years. And I looked for work in February. Then I went to the UK for a holiday. Also great after 2 years in lockdown in Melbourne. Can recommend. This whole talk is just making me say things that are going to make you hate me. But anyway, so I had to look for work in February, and I ended up working at a bank, kind of. Ferocia does the digital front end for Bendigo Bank, and that's the side of the company I work for. And then the other half of the company, as I'm sure most of you will have heard of by now, is Up Banking. Also, want to take a minute. Anyone that wants to jump in and ask questions or even contribute to this, you're all very intelligent, worldly people. I'm sure you've got as much to say about this as me. And this is just a chat, really. It's not a talk. So please jump in. I'm hoping I can see the chat window here. Oh, that's not gonna work. Let's put it there. Yeah, so I ended up working at a bank, or at least the digital front end of a bank. And I was surprised by that. And I'm one of those people that thinks, the unexamined life isn't worth living. And I didn't like the thought that I'd made a decision that I didn't fully understand about my life, especially something as kind of far reaching as who I was going to work for. And so, already stuffing it up. Let's go back. So I had to think about what I had done to make this decision to go with Ferocia. And as I did, I realized there's actually a ton of factors, not all of which I'd consciously thought about when I was making this choice. So I thought I would do a bit of a talk on what those things were for me. Also asked around a bit at work. Good question. Asked about around a bit at work. I might get to that one at the end, Brendan. In terms of things that other people felt were important to them as well. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, partly because I'm almost at my screen limit for today, how much time I can spend talking to my computer. But also, I don't think I need to go into detail. Again, you all seem fairly switched on and like you've been around. Just some quick caveats. I don't think this talk does make some assumptions, right? We are currently, and fingers crossed it stays that way, in a sweet job market for employees, right? If you're looking for work right now, you've probably got options, especially if you're in this meetup. And so really it's coming from that angle of people who have choices. Obviously, if your choices are much more restricted for whatever reason, a lot of the stuff I'm going to say, you might need to compromise on a lot more than others. Secondly, if you're a junior and you're looking for work, again, I don't think too many people on this call are juniors, but also I don't want to stereotype by looking at your faces. I would say just take whatever job you can get. Like that first job in tech is really hard because not enough of us, and now I'm speaking to everyone on this call, are hiring and training up junior engineers, which is why there is such an incredible squeeze and incredibly high demand for seniors. So if you're a junior, take the first job you can get, as long as they don't seem to be awful people and they're willing to pay you, and take it from there, because then you'll learn about what comes next and you'll get some stuff in your resume and things will change. But this talk is not for you. So for everybody else, let's talk about some of the things. I'm going to skip through some of these more obvious ones fairly quickly, but if you want to have more of a conversation about it, I'll try and keep an eye on the chat there as well. And yeah, we can go into more detail. So firstly, size. I think honestly, whether you're an individual contributor or a manager, I think size is going to be your biggest determinant of the company in kind of how your day-to-day is going to go, right? And again, there's people in this call from all kinds of companies. Startup, your day is going to be very, very different to if it's a middling or a larger company. You're going to have a lot more opportunity. There's going to be a lot more chaos. You're going to be asked to wear a lot of hats. You're going to have to learn things quickly, probably by yourself. Again, depends on the startup and depends on lots of things, but there's just going to be a lot more freedom, a lot more opportunity, and a lot more chaos. So if you like those things, then go for the smaller companies. Middling companies, I think, are really interesting. We're talking about companies here that have got product market fit, or maybe they're on kind of series C or D. I don't speak the startup language, the VC language so well. So anyone who does, jump in and sing out. But depending on where they are in terms of knowing who they are and how they're going to make money and how they're going to be funded and whether they're making a profit or how, you know, maybe not at the middling size, maybe, is going to have a lot of impact on your day-to-day, right? How much risk there is that the code that you're working on is going to get thrown away, or how much certainty there is about what we'll be doing next year or in 5 years' time, right? So it's kind of a spectrum, right? Then you get to bigger companies. And of course, the bigger the company, the more likely that you've been hired to do a specific role. This is your job. This is the problem we want you to solve. This is the tech stack we want to work on. These are the people you want to work with, you know, all that kind of stuff. And things are likely to be more slow as well. There's probably going to be more process, more bureaucracy. But at the same time, with big, and I'm going to put huge in there as well. You know, I came from Zendesk, right? So Zendesk, I think, is somewhere between big and huge. I don't know how we measure these things, but you know, you're also going to have the option with these larger companies to play with toys on a scale, right, with technology on a scale that you just won't get in some of those more high freedom, fast moving environments. So I think size for me is one of the biggest things in terms of you know, determining how my day-to-day is going to be. I came from somewhere between big to huge, and I've moved back to out of startup probably into middling, I guess. Also, someone's pointed out, Ferocia was bought by Bendigo Bank last year. So I have, you know, I work for Ferocia, but I still have to deal a lot of my day with Bendigo Bank. So it's a little bit of that kind of middling, and then a little bit of big as well on top of that. And that's determined my day. The other thing in terms of size is size of the team. I only want to mention this very briefly, but if you're being hired into a team of 15, 16 people, chances are you're not going to spend a lot of time with your boss, and they're not going to be that focused on you and your career or your other opportunities, or maybe helping you with issues you've got with the team or the process, the technology. I'd call that out as a red flag. But then I assume we all have preferences in terms of, like, I love a team size of about 8 for lots of reasons that are boring and I won't talk about here. A lot of people like a smaller one because then they have a lot less communication overhead. I'll leave that to you, but definitely worth a think. And then the third thing in terms of size, I think, is the size and the age of the technology. Now, can you go into a job interview and say to the interviewer, how many lines of code do you have, or whatever metric you want? Probably not. But, you know, how many repos, how many different tech stacks do we have? How old are they? How much of the work is dealing with legacy code versus new stuff versus I don't even know what, right? So I think these are questions that, if these things are important to you, could be worth an ask. And then the people, of course, you know, most people are very focused on working with people that they actually like. But what does that actually mean in terms of making a decision when you've got a couple of offers in front of you? I reckon the big one for me is, who will your boss be, and do you like them? Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about hiring and having unbiased hiring and really, you know, trying to be objective about this stuff. But from this perspective in this talk, it's the exact opposite. This is about you and your life and how you're going to spend the majority of your week. And I think you need to be deeply biased for the things that you like. And so with your boss, you know, this person is going to control, again, promotions, pay rises, access to opportunities. They can either help you or hinder you in so many ways. And I think you have to get a good feel for them. Not necessarily do you want to go camping with them or be best friends, but do you get a good vibe? Do you like them? Whatever that means to you, right? I think that's actually quite important. But in terms of who runs the company, and again, this is different if it's tiny to if it's massive, but in any case, I still think there's room in here to go, and this is important for me. You know, do I respect the people that run the company? Do we share similar values? You know, Bendigo Bank doesn't lend to fossil fuel companies, and they invest heavily in the community. And they're known for being a good bank, which in Australia is almost oxymoron. What's the other one? The contradictory one, that one. And so this is really important to me, right? And so, yeah, I don't have to like the CEO, I haven't met the CEO of Bendigo Bank. I don't know her. I'm pretty sure it's her. I don't even know. But I know that we're similar in terms of values. Same with decision-making, communication. And that's the kind of thing that I would be assessing during the hiring process. How do they speak to you? How do they communicate with you? You know, looking for work is a stressful proposition. Are they at all empathetic to that? Or are they just like, show up here and there'll be an interview and they don't give you any information and kind of leave you out to dry? So, you know, these things are important. And then what's the team like? Do they seem happy to be there? I think hopefully you'll be interviewing with some of these people. If you're interviewing with no one that you're going to work with, for me, that would be a red flag, because I do want to meet some of the people I work with before I start. And do they seem happy to be there? Are they excited about interviewing you? Are they excited when you ask them about the company or the challenges or the work that they're doing? So yeah, I think that's important. And then turns out this was actually the reason that I ended up at Ferocia, and I didn't realize it until afterwards when I thought about it. Again, the basket of qualities for this company and a bunch of the other companies I talked to were really similar. But I think if I had to pick one reason why, I think a lot of the leadership team at Ferocia are people that I really feel I could learn from. Like, you know, I had this experience at Zendesk working in this massive company, and managed to somehow get through that with, you know, a lot of learning. And now I want to learn about some different stuff. And the people at Ferocia, to me, gave me the vibe that I could do that. So I thought that was, yeah, one to mention. Now, this is something we kind of talked about earlier, and all of you people who know more about this than me, please jump in. But what are the money pressures, not on you as an employee, but on the company? Because this is going to determine how your day goes, right? Is it a tech first company? You know, I used to work for Lonely Planet. It's a book publishing company. Surprise, they were really not very good at software development. And that's okay if the leadership is bought in and values what it is that you're doing. And, you know, we hope that's what we're doing at Bendigo Bank, right? It's a bank, it's a 164-year-old bank, but they are bought into the fact that the only way forward to thrive is digital. And that's okay. But if it's not a tech first company and they don't really understand software development, you know, I spent a lot of time at Lonely Planet talking to the bosses about how software development worked. And they didn't really believe me anyway. And they were book publishers and it was all too hard, right? So you want to look into that. Yeah, I'm yeah, way ahead of me, Dan. Will you be a cost center, right? So even if you're a tech first company doing tech, if you're in the cloud team, are you a cost center? Is your job to lower costs instead of to increase revenues? This is not good or bad. It just determines where the pressures on your team are going to come from, because this is capitalism, as we have mentioned, as much as some of us wish differently. And so there are going to be pressures on you and your team. And so being able to kind of see those and work out, are they the ones you like versus the ones that you've been there before and you don't want to deal with again? I think it's a good question to ask. Is it publicly listed? Now, we've already kind of talked about this tonight, so I won't go into too much, but one of the things I learned working at Zendesk is that it was a growth stock, which means we don't have to make money, we don't have to be profitable, but we have to grow revenue 30% year on year. And when I started there, we had to grow 30% of $150 million a year. It's very rough numbers. When I finished up there, we had to grow 30% of over, I think it was like 1.2, $1.5 billion. That is a very different pressure on each individual team and on the company as a whole. So that's one set of pressures. And the other set, of course, is it old-fashioned profitable? We make more than we spend. That way you're going to be focused probably just as much on lowering costs as you are on increasing revenue, depending on where the business is at and if it's in a growth phase or a shrinking phase. So I think these are things that are worth thinking about, especially if you're going into management or leadership, because these are the problems that the company is going to make your problems. Yep, here's Dan going, yep. Are they making money or are they losing money, or do they even know? I did work for a company that didn't know because they didn't want to know, and none of you will be surprised to hear that that ended very badly. I would put that on my list of red flags. But you know, this is a good question. If you're in that last interview and they're like, do you have any questions about the company? How are you doing? You know, if they're losing money, where are they hiring people? Are they a growth, you know, whatever. There's lots of different ways that all of these things will put pressure on you and your team. And it's good to know where that's going to come from before you start. Last one, of course, is it a consultancy or a product company? Pure consultancy is if I'm at my desk working, then the company is making money. And if I'm not, the company is not. Now, that doesn't mean working in a consultancy is bad. It just means it's a very particular way of making money. The only way of saving costs generally at a consultancy is to let people go. It's a very, very different model to, for example, Ferocia is making money right now. And I'm sitting here talking to you and they're still making money. Well, probably not anything I've done because I've been there 3 weeks, but you get the idea, right? And then also there are different kinds of consultancies that might make money by selling and supporting software. So then it's not so much, are you being charged out at this particular moment? I have a tendency towards product company because it just suits me and my lifestyle better. I work 4 days a week. I've never really felt like I would be good value for money at a consultancy where it was purely they're getting paid if I'm working for a client. So it's something for you to think about. All right, money. Now this is your money, not the company's money. I think if money is your main priority, no worries, right? Just shop around till you get the highest offer and take that job and you're good. I think most of us, I'll get back to that one as well, Brendan. Most of us, of course, would like more money rather than less money, but also most of us probably have other priorities as well, which is why things get a little bit more complicated. This is one of the things that I saw a fella I hired last year at Zendesk do, and I was like, this is really smart. Companies are in a race to get good developers, especially mid, senior, and above. And so they're offering all kinds of remuneration or compensation packages. Pop it in a spreadsheet, make sure you're adding everything up. This is the kind of thing we sort of had at Zendesk. Well, not sort of, we had at Zendesk last year. And I guarantee you that when Zendesk makes an offer, they are calculating all of these things and adding them all up. And so you should be as well, so that you're comparing apples to apples. Other companies, it's just the salary and it's much more straightforward. But just double check that you're comparing apples to apples. Ask about how regularly they do pay rises, because this is also going to determine how happy you're going to be money-wise going forward, right? Some companies, especially the newer ones, might have quite a, you get one if you get one, or you don't if you don't kind of situation. Again, the bigger companies probably say every year, 2 months after the end of the financial year, we give pay rises or bonuses or whatever. But these things are important, especially if you're going to take a job with less money. If you know that pay rises are going to come regularly, that might be more attractive to you than if you're just, less secure about when your pay is going to go up. So I think that's important. Obviously, if you're compromising on money, you want compensation in other ways. You don't need me to tell you this because you're all grown-ups, stuff like that. Now, this one I think is super important for some people. Where are they on the chaos to certainty spectrum? And I've known people who have quit jobs because there was too much chaos and they wanted a lot more certainty. And I know people who have left because there was too much certainty and they wanted a lot more chaos. So just have a think about that. Obviously, early stage startup is likely, not always, but Instagram was probably pretty short and sweet with the chaos. Although maybe not, I don't know. And then, something like a big 4 bank, Bendigo, I think, is number 5, depending on how you slice it. So I'm not including us in there, but a lot more high certainty of, this is the job and this is what you're hired to do. And these are the processes you'll do. And this is the tools that you use to do it. And you have to use Jira and you have to use X and you have to use Y, and all of us will fall differently on that spectrum of what we like, and we'll fall differently at different times of our lives, right? I just had a cup of tea a few weeks ago with a friend of mine whose little boy is 11 months old, and he used to love chaos. He used to thrive with all the freedom and the uncertainty, but now he just wants to get to work, do his work, and then get home to his little boy. And so he's far more interested in just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it, and then I'll go home to my family. So how much freedom or uncertainty do you enjoy? And then this is another one, I think, that was a really big one for me, probably a little more relevant, I guess, if you're a leader, technical leader, or a manager. What is the problem do they want you to solve, right? I was at Zendesk for nearly 6 years. I got to do so much cool stuff. I learned so many fantastic things. And then I was ready at the end of that time for a new set of problems. I wanted a new problem domain and I wanted new problems to solve. And the problems that they have at Ferocia right now seem very exciting to me. If you're looking for a company with no problems, tell me if you find it, I'll come work with you. But, this is really, especially as leaders, you're being hired to solve problems. Although I would say as an individual contributor, you're going to be hired onto a team and you want to know, right, is that team's focus BAU? I know developers who love BAU. When I was a developer, I loved BAU. I loved taking a thing that was already there and doing something and making it better. Other people, you're going to want new shiny stuff. Other people, like, I want to refactor and I want to take this tech debt and I want to make the world a better place. So, ask about, BAU, sorry, is business as usual, or maybe not maintenance actually, but it's just keeping things working as they are, but, continuous improvement, right? Making them better as you go along. Sorry for using acronyms, silly me. But yeah, I would ask in the interview what your main focus is, because this is, again, going to determine the flavor of work that you do. And I know some of you will have very specific preferences for that, or at least preferences for things that you really don't want to do, or maybe you've been doing them for a few years and you're sick of them and you want to do something different. All right, so the things that matter to you, I'll come back to the questions in a minute. I'll just finish this up. We're nearly at the end. Now, I've listed a bunch of kind of generalized things, but I don't know who you are. I don't know what your life is. I don't know what matters to you, but make sure you include them. I think we can get hung up sometimes in status or money. I want this title, I want this, but there's so much to a job that is going to determine your quality of life. And, here are a few things, like, there's some great companies that work in Cremorne, but I live in Coburg and the commute to Cremorne is like an extra 20 minutes on my CBD commute. And I can't do it, and I've had to talk to some of the folks over there and say, I love everything about what you do, but I'm not going to come work for you because I don't want to spend that long getting to and from work every day. I also don't love remote work. Give me an option, and I want to be in the office most of the time, maybe not all the time, most of the time. So yeah, these things are important to me. I don't know what's important to you. Have a think about it, and don't discount the things that we're told we're supposed to want, but maybe aren't that important to us, or account for the things that are really important to us that maybe other people don't value. Like, it's okay. It's okay. And then, prioritize your non-negotiables versus the optionals. And I really, I think about this like backlog grooming or, sprint prioritization work. Like, yes, of course we want all the things, but you have to decide what are your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves. And I'd really recommend having no more than 3 or 4 things on that must-have list, because it gives you a lot more options, but also it means that, you've just got a lot more freedom to choose in the market. I do think, however, and this is one of the things I did, and I wasn't going to, and then I changed my mind, if you can get a couple of offers on the table, because I didn't end up going with the offer that I thought I would once I had 2 offers on the table, because of the reasons that I've already discussed. Once I could look at these 2 competing offers and really do a kind of a pros and cons, my non-negotiables versus the optionals. And we make the best guess, right? I've seen people tie themselves in knots and be absolutely like wringing themselves out. Am I making the right call? Am I not making the right call? I mean, basically, again, we're in a lucky position in Australia right now with this industry, with the experience that we have in this room, where we can make a bad call and then we can undo it, right? I was chatting to someone the other day who changed companies, worked at the new company for 3 days, and then went, oh, this isn't for me. And then went back to the old company and actually is very happy. So, we're lucky, we're privileged, let's acknowledge this, but also it means you can rely on it to not torture yourself that you need to make the right decision. Because ultimately, until you start work, until you get going at a company, you're not going to know if it was the right call to you. All you can do is, take your best guess. So that's it. That's me. Let me move some windows around so I can see things. Stop sharing. I don't need to see my boring slides. Cool.
Thanks, Adele. That was really good. A lot of those things resonated with me as well. Even things like you mentioned, making sure that there are people you can learn from when you're looking for your job. That was a huge factor. I just changed jobs 6 months ago, and that was a huge factor for me, was making sure that I had someone that I felt, that was going to provide me with growth and stuff like that. So Yeah,
it's huge, isn't it? And you don't really hear that much when people talk about it.
Exactly. So it's like, I'm just going from job A to job B. So yeah, that was really good. How, just out of curiosity, how long did it take you to sort of compile this list of things? Was it your 9 month sabbatical? Is it this over, your good career, or is this just this is the stuff that you've just gone through whilst looking for a job just recently?
Yeah, this is just the stuff I've gone through. So this was kind of a blur over the last sort of month or so, as I just, I really, like I said, I was thinking about it, and I was surprised by my choice. I did not see myself working at a bank or even the front end of a bank. And so I'm like, why am I doing this? So yeah, this is what came out of that. And then a few chats with folks at work as well to make sure I wasn't missing anything too obvious. But
yeah, cool.
We all know the obvious stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions, Adel?
Yeah, I can chuck in a question. Thanks, Adel. That was really good. I really resonated with a lot of that too. One of the things that I look for, and this might be too calculated and tell me if it's a bad idea, is not what the next job will be, but what the job after that could be. And so I think, like, if my next job is this, what would that put me in position for the job after that? And so one of the things that I look at is, as well as learning opportunities, is things like prestige of the company. Like if something is a tech company and it's very well respected within the industry, I think that will open up a lot of doors beyond that. And then, as you said about like consultancies, like I hate consultancies too, but I do see a lot of people. Isn't that what you said? I do see a lot of people.
Not for me.
Sort of go into consultancies for a couple of years and go through like several different clients and get just like a wealth of experiences early in their career, and that really sets them up for after that.
Yeah, agreed. I think, when I was younger and had a lot more energy, totally consultant game would have been, a really good way to, and I don't know about you folks as well that hire out there, but I've hired a few people who've come from web agencies, and oh my God, their React skills are elite because they've built hundreds of websites. Whereas, if you come to Zendesk, there's one website that's already built and you just follow the patterns, right? So yeah, there's definitely some massive, massive pros there, depending on where you are, what's important to you. Yeah, for sure. I think another thing that's interesting, and just to follow on your comment as well, in terms of like mapping your career out, really looking at, and this was something that I thought was interesting for me. It wasn't important, but I have the same title at my new job as I had at my old one. And I was going for jobs where I could have had very fancy titles, but for me, that's not that important. I realized that I'm actually happy, call me whatever you want. For me, it was the day-to-day work and the opportunities. And then I kind of am relying on my own, I don't know, networks and folks like you to listen to me when I go and say, oh yeah, I might have had the same title at Ferocia as I had at Zendesk, but listen to what I did, like listen to the level at which I was operating. But I know I'm going to have to do that because the title isn't going to reflect that. So it should be part of the calculation. Yeah.
How do you price flexibility? If that makes sense,
Yeah, sure. And I think it just depends, right? Like for me, flexibility is whatever, it's a word that means different things, I'm sure, to all of us. For me, it means 4-day week is non-negotiable. Like, don't even talk to me. I want my 3-day weekends. I'm not willing to give them up. That's what I require. And for each of us here, there's probably a slightly different definition, right, of what that word means. You have a gorgeous little baby, right? I'm sure flexibility means something very different to you. So the great thing is, after the last 2 years, are there many companies out there refusing to be flexible in the tech industry right now? I mean, and if so, who are they employing? Apple's walked back there, you have to be in the office that we spent billions of dollars building. Sorry, it's not funny. I'm sorry, Apple.
Thanks.
Oh, it's definitely funny.
Yeah.
And maybe more of a comment than a question. I just wanted to sort of share a story. I worked for a startup in New York back in 2015, and I was the CTO, so you would think that I should have known more about what was going on in the company, and I did ask, but I didn't ask enough. And I think the broader team didn't ask enough about how much money we had, what was happening with the fundraise, were our jobs safe? And the founders, I think they were embarrassed to share the details or afraid of how people would react if they share the details. So they didn't. And so we all suddenly lost our jobs. And I lost my job when I was back in Australia. And I got on Slack the next morning and no one was there. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody? It's because they'd all been fired. So that was a fun experience. So what I learned from that is, and passing on this, I think you touched on it, Adele, already, but just to really reiterate, especially if you're working for an early stage startup, don't be afraid to drill a bit on, how much money have they got, how much runway have they got? Yeah, is my job going to be safe in 6 months? I mean, I do that at SciStash because I've had that bad experience, but a lot of founders don't do it, and so yeah, try to uncover that if you can.
Yeah. So one thing that I've had in the past is when interviewing for a company that was quite small and I didn't know that much about. In the interview, I asked about their financial situation, and they refused to tell me because it was confidential information. And I don't know if that's normal or not.
Yeah.
It's common, but I mean, personally, I would still see that as a red flag. I think founders need to be a bit more transparent, but unfortunately, you do see it a lot.
And they could give you a feeling at least, right? Like, give me something, Again, are we making money or are we losing money, or do we not know? If you don't know, tell me, because they're going to run away. Yeah.
Brendan, you had a whole swathe of questions.
You did.
Yep.
Is anyone else? There's no one here. There's a couple of familiar faces, other people I haven't seen in years, but
there is no longer a conflict of interest between Up and Bendigo Bank, I take it, but there was. Do you know how that works?
No, so Up was always backed by Bendigo. So I've been a customer of both since the beginning of Up, and sometimes like I would put my bank account details, my Up bank account details into a form, and it would say, oh, that's Bendigo Bank. And I'm like, oh, is it? All right. So they've always been backed by Bendigo Bank. And now, yeah, they're just the funky digital face, like, what is it? Was it ANZX or something? All the banks are getting funky banks now. They're like digital only, mobile only. You can't go into a branch. Yeah. So it's just, two different banking products owned by the same people.
I like the sound of Up, but I need my banking on the computer.
I'm the same.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's mobile only. Mobile only. Is Ruby in decline at Zendesk? Anyone here from Zendesk? They're all new faces. Okay, I'll tell you then. From the 6 years I was there, yes, massively. It's got its lunch eaten by Go, of all things, and which I know is not an equivalent language. They do different things. They're good, but don't get me started. But in terms of the main web app, Zendesk, it's still Ruby. And that's not going to change. They're not going to do a rewrite. So it's more maybe the company grew and new stuff was not in Ruby. Not micro. I was having this conversation the other day. None of the services at Zendesk are what I would term micro services, but they are services, yeah. And some of them make more sense to be written in a language like Go. Some of them not so much, But yeah, but the main app is still in Go. And then, this was a good one. Do you know how much life at Up has changed since Bendigo Bank bought the company? So I wasn't there, obviously, when, I've been there 3 weeks, but it is the only topic of conversation, really. So in a way, it's actually been good, but I would say that is very specific to Ferocia and Bendigo Bank, because they always were tightly related, but they weren't the same. Now they have the same goals and they're owned by the same people and priorities are set by the same, so I think things have gotten better. But it's one of the questions I have for the company as I work there, right, is I love the way Ferocia works. Bendigo is a 164-year-old bank with a very different way of working, and we'll see in 2 years, right? We'll see if Ferocia is still Ferociaing or things have slowed down a bit. So ask me in 2 years. Okay. Question. Yeah, money by Afterpay. I saw a slide with you guys on it the other day. You competitors. Yeah, nice.
Does money have a desktop experience?
Oh,
No, it doesn't. But you know, I said the same thing, right? Because I'm an old man and I'm like, I could never use a bank that doesn't have a website. And they're like, you're not our target market, old man. So, you know, apparently the 18 to 25s, everything happens on their phone. They don't need a website.
oh.
I have to use an Android emulator to access my bank account. There's something wrong, surely.
For me, it's my hand gets too sore on the phone. How old am I? I need a keyboard.
Yeah, thumbs.
Yeah.
I assign the thumbs. I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Otherwise, we will wrap it up.
Final question. So where will you go to after Ferocious, Del?
Gosh, 3 weeks in,
Love
huh?
that.
Just stop the recording now.
If Ferocious just like went out of business or something, who would be on
Yeah,
your
sure.
short list afterwards?
Oh man. Like I always have this thing where my whole life is set up so that if I just couldn't be bothered anymore, I would just go sell cheese. And there's a really nice cheese shop on Sydney Road. And I just like the thought of talking to people about Gruyere all day. I just maybe I would do that.
So good.
Is that the place that sells truffled mac and cheese?
What's it called? Harper and Bloom. Bloom?
Yeah,
Harper
they're
and Bloom?
truffled mac and cheese. Oh my God.
Oh, I think
It's
you
good.
talked about it still like
I have.
ages
I'm
ago.
obsessed.
Yeah.
Nice. See, this is happiness. Yeah, no, I think all I would say is I think I would stay in the middling kind of size. I don't really have a preference anymore for, again, with companies that are, they're nice people doing nice things, but I'm not too fussed in the detail. But I think I've done enough with the big for a little while. Big requires patience. And I used to have a lot more patience, I felt, when I started at Zendesk. I didn't have as much when I left. And it wasn't them, it was me. ThoughtWorks, no, because I don't travel. I don't travel for work. And that's a requirement from them, is that you have to get on a plane.
You wouldn't take your cheese.
We all have our own. Sorry,
You wouldn't take your cheese startup huge. Keep it middling.
I'm not entrepreneurial. I don't have the energy that Dan has. I just want someone else to worry about how my salary is going to get paid every week. Yeah.
I mean, you're not a glutton for punishment like me, maybe.
I'm not. Also, I want to say thank you for your talk. It made me feel intelligent. I was like, I shouldn't understand this, but I think I understand at least some of it. So it was really good. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. That's very nice of you to say. Thank you.
Cool.